let's go. I just did a reaction video to Ruger and FBG Duck. They wouldn't let me do it because of some copyright stuff. I don't know, so it disturbed me anyway. All the dissing, I ain't messing with that dissing stuff of no dead people. If you want to do the friendly little battle and y'all both still alive, cool. Y'all going back and forth, but all that dissing dead people, especially if it ain't your wreck, why? I don't get it. I don't like it. We need to, that killing shit, nah. Like your own people, I ain't with that. But I will say this. That was the lyrics was there from Ruger. I'll tell y'all that. But now we finna jump into this. Ryan Wedding. He distributed cocaine. Alright, they say he had somebody killed that's gonna testify against him. So we about to react to that.
Today, he's facing charges of murder, attempted murder, and distribution of hundreds of kilos of cocaine. But around 25 years ago, he was a world champion skier and snowboarder, winning medals and representing Canada at the Winter Olympics. Ryan Wedding's life is one of the most insane crime stories ever lived. And after his sports career didn't make him the millions that he'd hoped for, Ryan would spend the next few decades living life like the real-life Walter White, starting from humble beginnings as a marijuana grower, building his business from nothing to a farm growing $10 million worth of product, and eventually graduating to the cocaine business, connecting with plugs from Russia, Iran, and eventually Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, where he would become such a high-ranking narco trafficker, he would wind up being compared to El Chapo and Pablo Escobar, and winding up on the list of the FBI's top 10 most wanted men. Ryan was a ruthless narco, allegedly ordering numerous murders, including one of a federal witness in Colombia, and in the process earning himself the menacing nicknames El Jefe, Giant, or Public Enemy. With a $15 million bounty on his head, by 2026, the FBI would make a shock announcement that Ryan Wedding had finally been brought into custody and was being flown to America to face justice. But bizarrely around this time, a suspicious social media account would emerge, proclaiming his innocence and suggesting that Ryan had never really been captured. In fact, it would claim that he had walked into the American embassy all by himself and surrendered willingly. This is the shocking true story of how Ryan Wedding went from mountains of snow to mountains of blow, having numerous people killed to protect his empire, and how he just might get away with it all.
Mountains of snow to mountains of blow. Oh, snap. Same thing, snow, blow, whatever.
The city of Vancouver has been consistently ranked as one of the 3 most livable cities in the world. This port city also has the reputation for being a mecca for cheap illicit drugs.
Ryan, the Wedding.
At 6'3" and with grandparents who owned a ski hill in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Wedding proved a natural.
A gunman apparently walked in and shot him 5 times in the head. U.S. authorities say it was Ryan Wedding who ordered that hit, placing a $5 million bounty on the witness's head.
It was complete silence. Only the noises of gunshots were there.
His lawyer advised them to kill this witness.
By 2015, Wedding disappeared as the RCMP charged him in a sprawl.
The lawyer told him to kill them up? Man, these motherfuckers. Who was it? He had a Russian mob lawyer, huh? Alright. His lawyer told him to do it? That sounds crazy. I ain't even gonna hold you.
Sprawling operation targeting cocaine imports to Canada. U.S. authorities allege Wedding stashes his vast wealth in assets like this ultra-rare Mercedes now in their possession. Mexico even seized paintings purportedly belonging to Wedding and 2 Canadian snowboarding medals.
To the efforts of the United States government, that the State Department has put up a $15 million reward for his capture.
15 mil, dead or alive.
If you get hit by a truck, who you calling? If you get bit by a dog, who you calling? Only one law firm I trust, and it's Morgan. job and it wasn't your fault. Let Morgan and Morgan fight for results. 35 years running, they got the game in a choke. Hired them to go to battle because they're ready for the smoke. Over 30 bill, one for all their clients. America's largest personal injury law firm, they're giants. Over 1,000 lawyers, they can handle these assignments. And they're in.
If you want to watch my videos uncut and extended, go to Patreon.
Trap Lord Ross. I get people be Morgan and Morgan paying a lot of people because I be seeing a lot of YouTubers. But damn, you went so far as to make a video? You must have got super paid. I call my homeboy Tef. If he somebody want me to sponsor him, I'll make a super video. I'll have P. Diddy in there dancing. Nah, not P. Diddy though. But I have motherfucking that dance. Usher or somebody.
Patreon.com/TraplawRoss, where you can get those for just $2. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify, so go search me there. Here's the video. On the night of November the 20th, 2023, a deceptive calm settled over the rental home on Mayfield Road in Caledon, Ontario, a rural town in Canada less than an hour away from the centre of Toronto. Inside the residence, the atmosphere was warm and still as the Sidhu family would wind down for the evening. But unbeknownst to them, a logistical error made in a cartel war room thousands of miles away had just signed their death warrants. Suddenly, the silence of their tranquil home was shattered by the violent crash of the front door being kicked off its hinges, and their sanctuary was breached by armed gunmen who moved in with the cold efficiency of a hit squad. These hitters, wrongly believing that they had found the thieves of a stolen drug shipment, and once they were inside, they didn't ask a single question. They just began executing this innocent family.
My father was shot in front of me. I heard my mother's last screams. And after that, it was complete silence. Only the noises of gunshots were there. That's it. I didn't even get to meet them for the last time.
Man, hold on.
My mom was in another room. My father was in front of me. He died.
These people right here, them. You mean them, right there. Her, right here. Her over there. The other one on the other side, over there. And this guy right here. You mean to tell me y'all thought they stole some drugs, fam, and killed them people? What they gonna do with some drugs? This is crazy. I gotta hear this, man. Cause that's crazy. You think they stole? I think she the one stole the drug, the one in the hospital. She looked like she would do it more than them. Honestly.
I wasn't able to do anything.
Jagtar Sidhu was executed first, and only seconds later, his wife Harbhajan's terrified screams would echo through the hallway before she too was silenced by gunfire. Meanwhile, in her bedroom on the first floor, their 28-year-old daughter would hear the chaos erupt, but before she can even react, the shadow of a gunman was towering over her. Mercilessly, he would raise his weapon and fire 13 times at the innocent girl.
Myself, I called 911 as soon as I got my consciousness back. Whole family shot. This is what I was saying repeatedly.
Miraculously, she would survive by playing dead while the men who destroyed her family walked out into the cold, dead night.
It's truly incredible that you're even able to speak with us today. You were shot 13 times. What have doctors told you about what your recovery is going to look like?
It's still gonna take a long time. I still have to learn sitting, standing, walking. It's been very hard, and some days are okay, not too bad. Some days are filled with pain, lots of pain and medications every time.
This cold-blooded hit was apparently sent as a message in response to a stolen drug shipment that had passed through Southern California, and the people accused of sending it were Ryan Wedding and his right-hand man, an enforcer who went by the name of Andrew Clark. Ryan James Wedding's story begins in the biting cold of the Canadian North. Born on September the 14th, 1981 in Thunder Bay, Ontario, he was born into a world defined by its rugged landscapes and punishing winters. From the very beginning, his path was carved by a family dynasty deeply embedded in the culture of winter sports. Specifically, his maternal grandparents Lauren and Marilyn Speece were local legends who had owned and operated the Mount Baldy Ski Club since the 1960s. Moreover, his father was a trained engineer and former competitive skier, and his uncle Craig, a Northwestern Ontario Sports Hall of Fame inductee. Accordingly, the trajectory towards elite competition seemed set almost from birth, and in 1993, a pivotal shift would occur when the Wedding family moved west to Coquitlam, British Columbia, when Ryan was just 12 years old. This relocation was life-changing, as it placed the young athlete directly in the heart of Canada's exploding snowboarding revolution.
This is what all the fuss is about. It's like snow surfing, an idea that originated in, where else? California. It's been around for almost a decade in the United States, and now it's becoming the trendy thing to do on our local ski slopes.
Almost immediately, a young Ryan would adapt to the new discipline, and by the age of just 15, he had already secured a coveted spot on the Canadian national ski team. Throughout his rapid ascent, he was supported by his family every step of the way.
From what I remember, he had good family support, and his mom and dad were at all the races, and
in a short period of time, he proved his natural talent wasn't just a fluke, eventually capturing the bronze medal at the Junior World Championships in 1999. Consistently climbing the ranks, he followed this up, winning a silver medal at the 2001 Junior Olympics. However, as the millennium turned, Ryan's sights were firmly set on the 2002 Winter Olympics. The 6'3" aspiring gold medalist was an imposing figure, and to many, he represented the hope of the nation.
Yeah, well, when I met Ryan, you're right. I'm about 10 years older than him, and at the end of my career, and Ryan was just 18 or 19, and he was like 6'3". He looked like Superman. He was going to be the next, and pretty much was the next best guy on tour that we had seen. And so,
poised for glory, he arrived in Salt Lake City, ready to represent his country on the world stage in the parallel giant slalom. But the Olympic Games for Ryan Wedding was unfortunately a heartbreaking disappointment, and the pressure proved far too much for the young athlete to handle. On February the 14th, 2002, instead of standing on the podium, he finished a disappointing 24th place in the men's parallel giant slalom, failing to even qualify for the medal rounds. This disappointing result would play at least a small part in shaping Ryan Wedding's dark future.
For him, his future was probably top of mind, and when he didn't perform at the top of his game in Salt Lake City, then he probably was thinking, like, what's the next thing that he can do, in his life to earn an income.
This massive failure was clearly a crushing blow for Ryan. Perhaps he'd imagined glory as a snowboarder and the fame and riches that would come with becoming a top athlete. But his huge successes in the Junior Olympics simply didn't translate into success in the big boy adult Olympics. Consequently, the risk-taking and competitive instincts that drove him down that mountain simply changed lanes, directing him to a much darker and more dangerous enterprise. And in the absence of the fame and fortune that he thought snowboarding would bring him, he decided to apply himself to another white powdery vocation, deciding instead to go from Shaun White to Walter White and get all the toys he wanted in life from the murky world of dealing drugs.
Looked like he got it in him.
Following the crushing Olympic disappointment in Salt Lake City, Wedding retreated to Vancouver instead of returning to the World Cup circuit to fight for redemption. At the time, he told his father he was interested in becoming a stockbroker or joining his dad's engineering firm with the goal of settling down in the suburbs with a wife and kids. Clearly, he wanted a career that would earn him the big bucks and the shiny toys, but it also appeared he was in a rush for glory. To earn extra money immediately, he would begin working as a bouncer, a job that placed him directly at the velvet-roped intersection of Vancouver's high society and its gritty criminal underworld. In the mid-2000s, Vancouver's nightlife was the playground for a new breed of gangster, with biker gangs like the Hells Angels having an iron grip on lucrative parts of Vancouver's drug markets during this time.
The city of Vancouver has been consistently ranked as one of the 3 most livable cities in the world. This port city also has the reputation for being a mecca for cheap illicit drugs. And with a boom in sales, there's been a major change in who controls the multi-billion-dollar business. But that changing of the guard has triggered a torrent of violence. Across Canada, the once dominant mafia has been pushed aside. rough, homegrown gang has taken over. The Hells Angels. Leaders in an enterprise that feeds on the misery and shattered lives of its victims.
This was also the era of the notorious United Nations, or UN gang, led by the charismatic and ruthless Clay Rouche.
But then there is another side, a hidden side caught by police cameras and microphones. Cross-border drug drops, photos of evidence, bullets, bling, and boomboxes in armored SUVs. Canadian authorities provided plenty of evidence to their American counterparts that led to Clay Rouche's guilty plea, and now that evidence has been made public. It shows the former kid from Chilliwack turned gangster talking with other gangsters about drug deals.
They would also be at war with their violent rivals, the Red Scorpions.
The city's new white team pulled off the raid Friday night. The squad was formed to tackle drug crime in the city, and its first big operation is being hailed a huge success. 2 men are in custody awaiting formal charges. One of them is directly linked to a notorious Lower Mainland gang.
At least one is known to our investigators as Red Scorpion.
The Red Scorpions are well known in BC for all the wrong reasons. The gang has been involved in violent turf wars linked to the drug trade, including the Surrey 6 killings back in 2007. Now that war could be coming to Nanaimo.
Unknown to the police, the city was on the brink of a gang war over its lucrative weed markets. These new gangs would leave bodies in empty cars along the waterfront, but their favourite hunting grounds were the very same nightclubs where Ryan Wedding was working. While the danger would leave other bouncers to start wearing bulletproof vests, the fearless and thrill-seeking Ryan Wedding refused to do the same, as he was apparently intrigued and excited by the violence of the drug wars. As a bouncer, he would watch as gang members flaunted cash earned from cross-border marijuana smuggling, as the dope dealers from various gangs would splash out on bottle service, exotic supercars, and penthouse suites. Intoxicated by this lifestyle, Ryan would physically transform himself to fit the part, dressing like the dealers that he looked up to, rocking Breitling watches and iced-out Ed Hardy shirts. Now, I remember this era, and I was rocking out as a teenager in a fake Breitling and Ed Hardy shirt myself, but fortunately I didn't fall into the dope game like Ryan Wedding. But for Ryan Wedding, he had undergone a complete transformation mentally and physically. Gone was the lean agility of a slalom race, as he would aggressively bulk up his physique through bodybuilding. With his newly acquired drug dealer starter pack, he apparently got obsessed with the gym, and he said that he hated if he worked out around anyone bigger than him. And beyond the gym, he was also becoming a monster in the streets. At a certain point, he began running weed grow operations too, and making money in the streets, and that money would come thick and fast. By 2006, the former Olympian had dropped out of college and was living in a condo with 30-foot ceilings in a ritzy neighborhood, driving expensive vehicles and outfitting his home with arcade games. He had quickly gotten rich off weed growing, splashing out on everything a first-time drug dealer would want. He had his initials carved in the entranceway of his condo, a garage kitted out with a Hummer, a BMW M5, and a Ducati superbike, but the glaring disconnect between a bouncer's income and this lavish lifestyle and spending was the first red flag to those around him that Wedding had found a new illicit revenue stream. Under the guise of legitimate business, Ryan Wedding had been running an enterprise in the streets since 2004, headquartered on a rural property in Maple Ridge, British Columbia, named the 18 Carrot Farm. But apparently he wasn't growing carrots, unless you count the Camberwell kind. According to reports, Wedding and a partner were cultivating 8,000 marijuana plants in a warehouse, harvesting every 2 weeks and selling them to a broker that pulled them in hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. But eventually, the authorities were tipped off when records revealed the simple warehouse was consuming enough electricity to power a medium-sized farm consistent with electrical use needed for high-intensity discharge lamps used in industrial-scale cannabis cultivation. Essentially, Ryan's operation was gobbling up way more power than it needed, and that gave the game away. On September the 22nd, 2006, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police would take action, breaching the warehouse with tactical units and seizing a whopping $10 million worth of marijuana. This came in the form of 6,800 plants and 86 pounds of dried flower, alongside a safe that was apparently stuffed with loaded guns. This grow was described as the largest marijuana bust in the history of Maple Ridge. But incredibly, with nothing but a confidential informant linking Wedding to the property, the police never actually pressed charges against him. And ironically, after essentially running it up millions of dollars off the drug game, getting caught, and facing no real consequences other than a financial loss, Ryan Wedding was unperturbed, and he vowed to build back better, and soon he decided to graduate to dealing harder drugs. By 2007, the Olympian's invincible aura had faded. Having lost nearly $800,000 in failed real estate and drug deals, Ryan Wedding was effectively flat broke. Desperate for a Hail Mary, he would gather $340,000 flying to Los Angeles with a plan to buy 24 kilos of cocaine from the Russian mob. The meetup took place near LAX airport with a man named Yuri, who was apparently an ex-KGB agent, which is basically Russia's equivalent of the CIA. But this buy was a setup. Yuri was a confidential informant wearing a wire, and the bricks of coke had been provided to him directly by the feds. Within hours of the arrest and the playback of taped conversations, his co-defendants quickly folded and cut deals for lighter sentences. However, Ryan Wedding himself stayed solid and refused to cooperate. This landed him in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in San Diego for 2 years awaiting trial. But from his cell, he would continue to manage his chaotic personal life, apparently juggling 5 unsuspecting girlfriends back in British Columbia who were washing his cars, cleaning his condo, and collecting his debts to pay off money that he owed. But even more dangerously, he used this time behind the wall to network in the criminal underworld. Jailhouse transcripts would catch him bragging about making good connections that would later transform him from a failed plug into a full-blown cartel kingpin. On November the 30th, 2009, a jury would find Ryan Wedding guilty of conspiracy to distribute cocaine. At his sentencing, Wedding played the fallen hero to perfection, pleading that it was a personal mission of his to rebuild his reputation. And apparently believing his remorse and that he was just a failed drug amateur, the judge would take pity and sentence Wedding to a remarkably light 4 years in prison, just half of what was standard for similar crimes. When he was deported back to Canada on December the 7th, 2011, he would return with serious connections and a contact list that would eventually allow him to bypass local suppliers and deal directly with the cartels. Upon his return to Canada in 2011, Ryan Wedding would leverage his American prison contacts to burrow deeper into the criminal underworld. Very little is known about exactly what he was up to or how he was running his operation during this period, but what is clear is that behind the scenes he was moving serious weight and becoming a full-blown drug lord. He would leverage his contacts from Mexico to North America, specifically Canada, to run up millions in the streets. And as the years went on, small pieces of information would begin to come out, linking him to that criminal underworld. By April 2015, the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, had caught up with Operation Harrington, a massive crackdown on drug smuggling routes from Mexico and Colombia to the United States of America and Canada that revealed that Wedding had infiltrated the Canadian government itself. As part of a string of raids, the police at the Canadian port of Halifax seized 200 kilograms of cocaine in 3 days, as well as a haul in the form of 400 bricks stamped with Louis Vuitton logos, a mark used to indicate high-end purity. Charges were laid against employees of the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Department of National Defence, and the Canadian Coast Guard, showing that Wedding had turned national defence assets into smuggling corridors. This was apparently a huge conspiracy that also involved gun smuggling in 8 separate importation conspiracies. And the authorities would claim that the bust was a huge milestone in their war on the cartels, with reporters specifically naming the Sinaloa cartel as being responsible for huge drug importation operations that made use of local representatives in Canada to receive shipments.
What if you let AI build your online business and you watched it happen live? Now on February the 23rd.
A bunch of people were arrested in these busts, but interestingly, when the handcuffs came out, the ringleader Ryan Wedding was gone without a trace, with reports on the operation describing him as still at large despite being charged and referencing his previous case where he tried to buy 24 kilos from those informants. Ironically, reports would reference his apology to the judge following his last conviction and claim that he was now facing 2 counts of conspiracy to import cocaine and conspiracy to traffic, as well as 1 count of cocaine trafficking. Wedding would apparently ghost, fleeing to Mexico and beginning a decade-long reign as a fugitive. And it was during these ghost years between 2015 and 2024 that the so-called Wedding criminal enterprise would truly take shape. He would operate as the leader, nicknamed El Jefe, or Giant, and apparently he secured the ultimate protection through a direct alliance with the Sinaloa cartel themselves. From there, the Wedding criminal enterprise utilized a sophisticated network of long-haul semi-trucks for their dope to cross the border from Mexico into Southern California. Once in Los Angeles, the drugs were stored in stash houses before being loaded into trucks being driven by Canadian operatives utilizing hidden compartments. And to clean the estimated $1 billion in revenue, Ryan Wedding moved to the digital age, laundering millions of dollars through cryptocurrency through a transatlantic money washing network. But nothing symbolized his insane wealth at this point more than his acquisition of one particular, very rare and specific car. The FBI's investigation would eventually lead them to the seizure of a 2002 Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR Roadster, one of only only 6 ever made, a car that was apparently initially ordered by Drake and carried an estimated value of $13 million US. This 8-figure hypercar was the perfect symbol of just how much dirty money Ryan Wedding was making and washing, but it was also a symbol of how desperate and slick he was having to be when it came to laundering and moving that money into seemingly legitimate assets. Really, he was having more money than sense and probably running out of things to do with it. In fact, in late 2025, the FBI and Mexican authorities would raid an entire warehouse in Mexico City, uncovering a $40 million motorcycle collection belonging to Wedding himself.
Valentino Rossi goes into the lead.
From the top tier of blazing fast road racing to a dark warehouse in Mexico. Motorcycles packed in rows said to be worth $40 million US, all seized from Canadian fugitive Ryan Wedding, and all seemingly purchased as a way to launder his drug money.
All in all, just an absolutely amazing collection of machines that Wedding has somehow been able to amass from we don't know where.
Rossi goes through as they dip down into a Arrabbiata.
The FBI now confirming some were used in professional racing, all of them discovered by Mexican authorities amid raids targeting Wedding.
So he was racking up tens of millions of dollars in his personal net worth, getting all of the toys he possibly dreamed of when he was trying to become a professional snowboarder. And so, through this complex web, the failed snowboarder from Thunder Bay had transformed into the CEO of a multinational corporation built on white powder and blood money. But, as is often the case, the mountain of money was one thing, but it would be the trail of blood and violence that would truly put the authorities on his tail. Following the slaughter of the innocent Sidhu family in 2023, in Caledon, the violence would continue, transforming a singular, horrific error into a systemic campaign of murder and elimination. Ryan Wedding, now insulated in Mexico, allegedly authorized a series of cleanup operations to settle debts and silence loose ends. The first target was 29-year-old Randy Fader. Unlike the Sidhus, Fader was not a case of mistaken identity, but an existential threat to the business that apparently needed solving. He was allegedly a big-time dope pusher in the area, and he had been investigated for 3 years, beginning in 2017 and culminating in a 2020 raid where 4.3 kilos of weed was seized, along with an undisclosed amount of fentanyl, 196 grams of cocaine, cash, guns, and a pill press. But it would all come to a close for him on the afternoon of April 1st, 2024, on a quiet street in the tourist city of Niagara Falls, Ontario, where the mundane rhythm of the neighborhood was shattered by an assassin's gunfire. Fader was apparently killed in the driveway of his home in a point-blank execution-style shooting as a result of his involvement in the Wedding drug ring. According to court documents, Fader was on the way out with a friend just before 6:20 p.m. when he turned to go back into the house to get something he'd forgotten. At this point, a white Audi would pull up and a gunman dressed in all black would hop out and shoot him in the head from just 3 feet away before fleeing the scene. And tragically, apparently his wife and young children were in the home and actually witnessed the murder from a window. Fader's taped-off home would be pictured in local news outlets, and apparently Andrew Clark, Ryan Wedding's ruthless second-in-command, who by this time was going by the chilling nickname The Dictator, was the one who had apparently orchestrated the hit. This hit on Fader was reportedly a contract killing carried out for $100,000 by a hitman nicknamed Mr. Perfect, with this apparently being an apparent response to an unpaid drug debt. Alleged leaked messages between Wedding's enforcer Clark and the hired hitman would circulate in the press, showing the chilling conversation where the hitman asked for a list of people to kill, promising to do the easiest one first, with him being told maybe the Niagara Falls Ginger, LOL, and explaining that the hit would be an easy 100K, describing it as a driveway job. Fader was found with life-ending injuries, his body a grim message to anyone in the network thinking of skimming off the top or talking to the police. Fader's grieving mother would also speak out to the authorities and the news, explaining she still doesn't understand why her son was targeted and that the mystery about his murder keeps her awake at night. She would also explain how authorities had, in her view, painted her son out unfairly to be a monster who actually deserved to be killed because of his involvement in this ruthless drug ring. Apparently, the FBI would claim that Fader was known as an international drug trafficker involved with the cartels, but his mother insisted he was just involved in dealing weed. She would show off the human side of this brutal, just business hit by showing the news his hat collection, and police would later claim to have arrested a 24-year-old named Malik Cunningham with $100,000 in cash and an iPhone including encrypted messages that pointed towards him being Mr. Perfect. But even with one hitter off the streets, the Canadian dope boys turned narcos would continue their wave of violence regardless of whether they had their chosen hitman, and the FBI would later allege that Wedding and Clark arranged a whole series of international murders just to protect their drug empire. Just 6 weeks after Fader's murder, the terror moved onto the sprawling suburbs of Brampton, Hamilton, Ontario. And according to the FBI, Mohammed Zafar had owed a drug debt to the wedding network, a fatal error in an economy where late fees were paid in blood. As he sat behind the wheel of his car, also in his driveway, a gunman would approach the vehicle, and Zafar was shot at point-blank range, executing him in the driver's seat while the neighbors went about their weekend routines. Despite evading the authorities masterfully in Canada, the feds in America were desperate to catch Ryan Wedding and begun making their search for him more public. Wedding and Clark were publicly charged in a DEA indictment in October 2024, which accused them of orchestrating 4 murders from Mexico and running a drug cartel shipping hundreds of kilos of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico, then Southern California, with it finally ending up in Canada. A wanted poster for Wedding would be circulated online too, and a suspect chart would show 15 other defendants in the conspiracy who had been captured at this point, including Andrew Clark, as well as those still at large. Courtroom sketch of 4 of the 9 Canadians who were captured as part of the conspiracy was shared prior to their extradition, and Clark himself was arrested on October the 8th in 2024 by Mexican authorities and extradited back to the US, arriving there in February of 2025, with Clark later pleading not guilty to murder and drug charges. But despite evading capture, the net was closing in on Ryan Wedding. Authorities circulated surveillance pictures taken of him by the FBI, and behind the scenes, Wedding was still willing to order murder and try and protect himself from facing accountability for running this drug empire. But the most brazen act of violence would occur thousands of miles away in the mountainous city of Medellin, Colombia, the original source for the cocaine being trafficked throughout America. The target was only known as Victim A, apparently a US federal witness who had turned state's evidence and was planning to cooperate against Ryan Wedding, but believing that he was safe far away from Canadian or Mexican soil. But on that afternoon, he would sit down at the restaurant Miarepa in the upscale El Poblado district, unaware that his location had been compromised. He would take a seat, order food, and begin to eat, not knowing that this would be his last meal. Surveillance footage would capture the cold efficiency of this hit. First, a heavyset male scout would signal the all clear, then an assassin would calmly walk up to the open window, firing 5 shots from a silenced handgun into the back of the witness's head. As patrons screamed, the shooter calmly vanished into the traffic, leaving behind a message that no borders could stop the Ryan Wedding organization from touching you. Shockingly, prosecutors alleged that the hit was facilitated by the alleged cocaine lawyer, a prominent Toronto defense attorney who used the legal discovery process to help hunt down this witness. Apparently using his status as a defense counsel, he allegedly obtained the witness's identity and location through the discovery process. He then allegedly passed the location to Ryan Wedding with a simple piece of advice: if you kill the witness, the case will be dismissed.
The U.S. government wants Paradkar extradited to face charges that could mean life in prison. Paradkar allegedly counseled fellow Canadian and Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding to murder an FBI witness.
With this public and international execution, Ryan Wedding had proved that he was now truly the head of a transnational murder-for-hire ring, and demonstrating that for his enemies there was truly nowhere to hide, and that to protect his empire he was willing to kill literally anyone, anywhere in the world. And now, with an alleged cooperating witness killed under their watch, the FBI would be furious and embarrassed and ready to do absolutely anything to take down Ryan Wedding. In response to the bloodshed, the FBI launched Operation Giant Slalom, an ironically named tongue-in-cheek reference to the devastating loss Ryan suffered in the 2002 Winter Olympic game with the same name that caused him to quit sports and take up drug dealing in the first place. With a new US administration prioritizing the drug war, pressure mounted on Mexico to take action, and security analysts believe that Wedding eventually brought too much heat, even leading the Sinaloa cartel to betray him to save themselves. Over the course of 2025, the FBI put in work and begun to track down Ryan Wedding and close in. In March of 2025, 2 months after the murder of the alleged cooperator in Colombia, the FBI announced that they were upping the reward for any information leading to Wedding's arrest to a whopping $10 million, later increasing that even more to an eye-watering $15 million. His name would hit headlines all over the world in mid-November when it was revealed that the FBI were closing in and had actually seized his Mercedes CLK GTR. This same month, 10 other people would be arrested in connection to the Wedding drug empire, including the lawyer who lined up the murder of the witness in Colombia. The news would report on the 10 arrests, as well as the still ongoing manhunt for Wedding himself, as well as new charges they were aiming towards Ryan.
Welcome back. The search continues for a former Olympic snowboarder turned alleged drug kingpin. Right now, there's a massive reward out for the capture of Ryan Wedding.
The DOJ announcing 10 arrests in the murder plot, but say the 44-year-old remains at large in Mexico, protected by the powerful Sinaloa cartel.
Bizarrely, following the seizure of that 8-figure Mercedes, an Instagram account began posting under the handle Boss Ryan W, putting up what appeared to be images and captions that were taunting the authorities. However, these images would later be exposed as being impersonators using AI. But there was something real going on behind the scenes, and soon the FBI would be crossing a big name off their most wanted list when it was finally revealed that Ryan Wedding had actually been captured. The manhunt would end in Mexico City on January the 22nd, 2026, when Ryan Wedding allegedly surrendered voluntarily at the US Embassy.
Tonight, the former Olympian turned alleged drug kingpin, who rose to the top of the FBI's most wanted list, now in U.S. custody, surrounded by top DEA and FBI officials, including Director Kash Patel.
This individual and his organization and the Sinaloa Cartel poured narcotics into the streets of North America.
While yet another allegedly AI-generated post would circulate claiming to show Ryan outside the embassy about to turn himself in. But what wasn't AI was his perp walk, which received huge publicity as he arrived back on the US soil, with FBI Director Kash Patel taking a victory lap. This was an interesting moment that caught headlines, with Ryan going viral for his apparently expensive designer fit, proving that even when turning himself in, Ryan Wedding was still that flashy, designer-clothes-wearing demon that he had been all those years ago when he was working as a bouncer, aspiring to sell pot. Today, Ryan Wedding sits in a federal cell awaiting trial that's currently scheduled for March 2026 after pleading not guilty, and if convicted, he'll be facing a mandatory life sentence.
Man, if that nigga get out, it's over. You think he gonna quit selling drugs?
You, just you, building your app.
I don't.
On base 44.
Money. But it seemed like that was short-lived. It seemed like that was short.
And I needed you to know why I came by. Yeah.
It seemed like that was super short-lived. That drug, man, that food, I don't know, man. I ain't never heard of dude, but that's a crazy story. He was getting killed by Canadians that look like lawyers and it's crazy, man. Ryan Wedding, crazy name and all.